get past the idea of it being horse poop,
Yeah.
you know, in there, you smell more the aroma of the horse and the horse's sweat. Oh
Right.
God, it's like when I'm grooming a horse or something, you know, smells good.
No, I totally
Okay,
understand.
you guys are live now.
It looks like okay, so Oki Nixikoa, Nistu Nidaniko, Makoyo Sukoyi. I'm Theda NewBreast. I'm part of the team with the Native Wellness Power Hour. And dang, we're 24 weeks. We've been going out in Indian country and getting indigenous voice to and share an hour to uplift and to share some of their own Indian stories. And today we have a really good guest. This is my nephew. This is one of my nephews that I look up to because one, he comes from the Rosebud area, or he comes from the Lakota people that I just admire for always being truthful to you. Always, they'll tease you, but they'll be truthful to you. So I have my nephew. We've been on several arenas, and then I guess, you know, what I'd like to say about our guest is that I've seen Greg work with young men. I've seen him work with men in situations where they got to express themselves. They got to say what happened. They got to, and the stuff that was hurtful, they got to truthfully put it out there and dialogue with someone else that could understand. And I don't know, Greg, it's like I've seen you work magic with young men as well as other situations. So so today our Power Hour is just, we're really looking at Native men healing. And so, Greg, why don't you introduce yourself? Why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
So, how mitakepi peshuto ogahe naha wahoki zanata hemielo. Sichanku makoche elwati. I currently live on the Rosebud Reservation. I am enrolled in the Crow Creek Sioux tribe, which is just up on the river, on the Missouri River. But I've been living here in Sichangu Makoche for 10 years. I'm the co-founder of We Chaw Ugly. We're Native Men Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. And I'm also the ranch foreman and equine therapist for Tiwahe Glukinibi, which is an SGU, Sintikaleshka University program, where we offer equine therapy for children's mental health. The work that we do is for young boys and men, boys from grade 6 to grade 12 and men 18 and above. I found the passion of this type of work at a young age. Being a boy, being raised by a woman. My mother taught me how to be a man, and that's something that's real powerful and real beautiful that I now understand as an adult. And so the work was founded back then when we were kids. The other co-founders, you know, Aldo and Jeremy, grew up the same way, and we had to work towards bringing peace and nonviolence and harmony back between men and women, especially because the women are the backbones of our nation.
Thank you for that. You know, I was just, before we got on, we were visiting, and we visited earlier about what Indian relay, you know, because Indian relay is just like, I don't know, some kind of magic, reinvigorating, you know, around here, Indian relays, you know. And so could you tell us a little bit about, I understand you just came from Wyoming. Tell us a little bit about how did you get to Wyoming with your team that you're with, or tell us just some of the stories that's going on and what happened in Wyoming and how you're maintaining this during COVID.
So specific during COVID, okay, there's a lot of ways a guy can go with that, especially working. So the boys on, so I co-own Indian Relay team. Our team name is Frontline Relay from Crow Creek, South Dakota. It consists of young boys, young warriors from ages 15 to 23. And so we got a real young team. our rider, our jockey is 17 years old, and our holders are 18, 19 years old, and our sender is 23 years old, and they're youth. During this COVID time, it's been tough. It's been financially struggle. It's been a financial struggle for us. Horses are expensive on their own anyways, and so are thoroughbreds. And being that the races are few and far between, the thoroughbred horses aren't able to, I guess, kind of earn their keep, but they're our relatives, so of course we're gonna look after them and things. But the young boys, no matter the financial struggle or the financial burden, I think myself and the other owners are going to do what we can for these boys, because these young boys kind of came and they stuck around and they wanted to be something greater. They wanted something, and they grew up around horses. So naturally, once we got involved in these thoroughbreds and things, the boys, they just took to it. And the communication and relationship that they have with these horses, I thought getting into Indian relay would just more or less be an opportunity for them to say that they've done it, we've done it and we're a part of it. I had no idea how amazing these young boys would actually be. Over in Buffalo, Wyoming was the Buffalo relay. What do they call the event now? Buffalo Indian Days, I think it was. There was 30 teams, 30 of the top teams in Indian country there. And we ended up placing 4th in the championship, 4th of all the 30 teams. And I couldn't be more proud of these young warriors. And just to sit back and watch them do everything on their own, from getting up and before the sun comes up, sun is just barely peeking up, and the boys are already up taking feed and going to look after the horses and things. Till the sun goes down, they're there checking on the horses, and these young boys exemplify what it is to be a young man in today's society. Especially during COVID, things get hectic in homes. Things are oftentimes tense inside of Indian homes, or just homes in general, but more specific to us, Indian homes. The boys, frustration grows anywhere, but the way that the boys deal with their frustration is, at the end of the day, they talk to each other and apologize for, maybe I said something that hurt your feelings, and they kind of talk about it that way. And it's been something amazing to watch. It's been just humbling to be able to be a part of. And knowing that we can race and run with some of the best in the world is pretty great, because there's some amazing teams out there, man. Over in Montana, you guys got a bunch of great teams. Here in Sioux Country, we got a bunch of amazing teams, and to be able to, them riders and them owners and team members to shake the hands of my nephews, I just stand back in pride. I just stand there with so much pride.
Oh, that's wonderful. I wanted to just kind of introduce the things that you do and the story that you're about to a lot of our audience. We have a lot of international people watching, and then we just have there's just a lot of Indian people who are really focusing on taking care of themselves. And so I'm just going to ask you a broad, open-ended question. So how does an Indian guy, what have you learned in just taking care of your Indian guy? How do you practice taking care of yourself?
Communication.
Okay.
I'm blessed and lucky to have a partner who gives me the freedom to communicate, not just the positive, but even the negative feelings that I have. My partner makes a pretty safe place for me to share. Even some of the things that are deeper within myself, she creates a pretty amazing place for me. And so I'm blessed with that. Things I've you know, and it's easy now. I say it's easy now because I don't know how it is everywhere else in the world, but indigenous country, women make everything better. But before, when I was on my own, when I was single, it was difficult. Me as an Indian man, a Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota man, it was hard to find peers who had similar goals, wanted to build on myself and get better as a man and as a person and as a relative. Once I found men that had similar interests, I found it easier to kind of start having them conversations, even with other men. You know, at first it's really, really hard to have a conversation of difficulties and struggles that we've been in our childhood and our upbringing. We found it difficult to talk about. But me personally, and what I've seen in the programming that we've done, even though it's as hard as it is to talk about our own trauma, the things that we've been through in our lives, the difficulties such as the assaults, whether it be physical or sexual, or physical and sexual assaults on us when we were children, it's, oh God, it's hard to speak of those things without blaming or without wanting, just without being angry. It's really hard. But when you're doing it amongst men, you also feel their anger and you're in a very vulnerable place. And so being things that help working on myself, being a man, how to work on man things, is I believe that they're very similar to even women's things. And it always went back to communication. We're one of the same. Women communicate the same way men do. It just so happens that women are more in touch with emotions. Women are more emotional beings than us men, because we don't think that those types of things happen to us as well. They do. They do. And they have. And they are. They are happening to us still. So, yeah. And it's something, communication with other people.
This emotional wellness is the one thing that, you know, I've really appreciated over the years when we've been working with Indian families, or at NICWA conferences, or we're you know, we're helping in different arenas, is that you're really able to talk about. So tell us a little bit more how this emotional, because sometimes they'll say an emotional IQ, they'll say that has a good emotional IQ, which they can express themselves. Tell us a little bit more about how important expression of emotion for Native men.
Expressing your emotions. So brothers out there, and if you don't know who I am, my name is GreyCloud, and I come to you in I'm speaking to you in a very encouraging way, no threatening, no non-threatening way. It's very, very important to speak of the emotions that you have inside of yourselves. And so personally, and you know, I can't speak for the other co-founders, I can't speak for them today, but they have very similar stories. And the other brothers that I walk with have very similar stories. But personally, I found myself a boy in a man's body. I found that everything that I did and everything on how I reacted towards my partner, or even towards coworkers, colleagues, friends, anybody, every way how I reacted was the little boy inside of me who was hurt. There's a little boy inside of me. To this day, that little boy lives here. That little boy lives here. And there are certain times where that little boy will be afraid. That little boy will get scared. That little boy will feel vulnerable. And I have a choice. Men, brothers, you have a choice that you make, that you can make. And during that time of fear, that little boy is scared. You want to lash out with so much anger and protection of that little boy because you don't want that little boy to hurt no more. So you make a choice to lash out in an aggressive way or in a peaceful way. Oftentimes we lash out aggressively. Why? Because we feel that it works, because people will leave you alone. And we think, brothers, we think that that's protecting, and we think that that's what we do as men to protect our families. And you can call me on this, but we're wrong. We as men are wrong. Why? Because that's not how we protect a child. You protect a child by sharing with them. You protect a child by explaining things with them. So the little boy inside of me, I had to learn how to protect him without using anger, without using without using this as a man. I had to use this as a relative. I had to use my heart. I use my heart. And brothers, it's very influential and it's very helpful to begin healing. Healing from whenever you very first experienced trauma and hardship in your life. And this, I had to go back to when I was a little boy. I went back to the most horrific time when I was 9 years old. I was sexually assaulted by 6 men. I went back there, and it was hurtful, and it was ugly. And but I went back there. I had a brother who helped me go back there, and I'm glad I did. And it's less hurtful today, but it's just thinking about that little boy and what he went through. What that little boy went through when he was 9 years old. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But it was something that I had to get out because I was ashamed of it, right? And because I was ashamed of what happened to me, I thought I was disgusting. So I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think that I could. And then I learned that, that I was beautiful. I learned that I was good enough. I learned that I was worthy. I learned that what happened to me as a boy had nothing to do with me at all. It wasn't my fault. And in ceremony, I took that little boy in my dreams and in my vision, in my heart, and I closed my eyes and I called to that little boy. And I hugged him. I hugged that little boy. And I just held him the way that little boy needed to be held and loved. And I did that for me. And since that day, I know how to love myself. I know how to love myself, and I deserve, and I know that I deserve to be taken care of within myself. That I know that it's nobody else's job, it's no one else's responsibility, it's nobody's responsibility to make sure I feel safe. That's mine. And from that point forward, I grew as that little boy. And that little boy is growing up. Today, he's growing up. And that little boy is becoming less and less afraid. Because that boy is less and less afraid, he's able to have healthier relationships, even with men. He's able to have healthier, I'm able to have healthier relationships with my partner. I can have open dialogue without feeling that I'm going to be hurt. I can explain things with my partner without feeling that I'm going to be hurt. And so, brothers, I encourage you to heal, man, because it's needed. You're needed.
Mm-hmm.
We need you. Auntie Theda, she needs you. Your mothers and all women out there, they need you. They need us. So brothers, if you can, find some type of healing.
No worries. No worries.
Sorry about that.
Well, you know, our we're at a time, you know, going into like this month of you know, our Indian people, you know, we've been through all kinds of challenges. You know, we're just thinking, you know, on a broader base. You know, we've come through smallpox, tuberculosis. We've come through all these genocidal attempts. So let me ask you this question. You know, a lot of people look up to you with your man protection around some of the standing rocks. Say we went back 4 years ago. A lot of us, I mean, we learned so many things. So I'd just like to ask you, if reflecting back over the last 4 years since like Standing Rock, what kinds of things have you thought about that you say, hey man, I got, or I learned that, or that made sense to me? What have you learned since then, like reflecting on these last 4 years as a man?
I learned that everybody, our people, have always been led by someone that we put in charge. And a lot of times, we as a people, we fight to be the one to be in charge, right?
Mm.
And I learned that, you know, not even wanting to be in charge or be in control of anything and just staying far away from it as possible. I learned that instead of running from leadership, because that when you acknowledge people as a relative, there's less understandings of being in control of somebody or being their leader, and more of, well, how can I look after my nephews? Those are my nephews. Those are my nieces. Those are my tonjan. Those are my toshka. And as somebody, indigenous people, so Lakota, specifically Lakota, Dakota, our own name means a people of peace, a peaceful people. And we're all about family. So indigenous folks all over the world, your most important belief and culture is family. We wouldn't have a culture if we didn't have family. And I learned as a man that if I have something and I have even an idea or a way that I can help look after my family, I'm going to do it. And so are the young men that are a part of the societies that have come from Standing Rock. So are the men who are even a part of societies that dated before Standing Rock, that help support the new young men's societies and young women's societies since then, such as the Horse Nation Society that I'm a part of. These young men and women from Standing Rock wanted to go back to their own tribes, ride horse through their tribes to let them know that they want to be a part of a horse nation for the greater good. And they came to me and said, Lakshi, we want to ride to each and every one of our communities and speak to our own people. How do we do that? I was like, oh, geez, nephews and nieces, you put me into these big challenges. But we did. We rode 1,800 miles through every one of the Ocheti Shakoi tribes. And them boys and girls, they created something beautiful. But what I learned and what I took into consideration during that time was what worked at Standing Rock and what didn't. Community worked. Everybody wanting to be here did not. And so myself, and mainly the main one, instead of seeing anything from up here, I was here with all the young boys and girls. I was just an uncle. It's all that was. And learning that when even a nephew or a niece chooses to voice their own concerns, but that there is a ceremony coming true. Our ancestors prayed for us. Our ancestors prayed that our generations would survive. And watching them young men and women do more than survive, watching them young men and women live, I just seen that it was an answer to a prayer. That was an answer to a ceremony. That they're so amazingly strong. And we've seen elders such as yourself, Auntie Theda, that supported the younger generation here, where I'm supporting the younger generation there. Oh God, this is an answer to ceremonies by our ancestors. I believe that we are an answer to our ancestors' prayers, and we should continue praying that way. We should continue being that way and being good relatives towards each other, whether you're blood or not. It means just the same, creating those peaceful understandings within ourselves and each other. That's what I've seen that works. And that's what I've experienced is still going to work and is currently working.
No, I really, we appreciate your reflection on that. Because even during this time, I just been noticing, you know, just as when the tribes, I just remembered the feeling, you know, my hair standing up. You know, our Argonax Demidog, Crazy Dogs went down there, just having all of this ceremony, all of these prayers. But I just remember feeling my hair stand up because it was tribes helping tribes. And it was just tribal people just going all out, you know, that water was sacred. And that, I mean, we've all rethought, I think we were the epitome that helped all of our world look at water differently. So, and we appreciate, you know, I just wanted to ask you that, but you know, native men and wellness in some of our arenas is something new, is something new to hear about. So let me ask you this, and because I think that you're practicing new, healthier ways. We were talking about courtship. And so for our brothers out there and, you know, and our sisters, can you just tell us a little, Greg, tell us a little bit about what is healthy courtship or how is it done? I mean, like, you know, back in my generation, sometimes people, you know, it was all around drinking. You know, there was, you hooked up with drinking, and that's totally, it's changed. So what can you tell us about courtship in today's world?
So courtship is almost unheard of nowadays. Having this conversation before, I mean, courtship was something of our people and our culture. That's what we did well, was courted. You have, well, let's put it this way. In relationships, in my past relationships, where I learned after courting, I learned about courting, I learned about this and that or whatever, trying to facilitate the idea of courtship with a woman, but I felt, now I know that it was something that was trying to force. We need to do this. We knew it that to do it that way. And again, this was prior to my healing and my understanding as a man. But after finding healing and finding that you can't force those things, you got to have a conversation and trial and error. Again, I'm very lucky to have found a woman who makes or who helps bring comfort to me expressing and bring comfort to dialogue. And so courtship her and I, so my partner's name is Corinne Rice. She's Mohawk, Lakota. She, her and I, we courted for, a number of months prior to us making our dynamic and our relationship official. We courted. We learned about each other. We discussed things, and things that we didn't find that was really comfortable to share at first became quickly comfortable to share. We learned about each other before moving on to the next step. And once we found that we enjoyed each other's company, once we found that we came to an agreement that this is what I can bring to the table and this is what she can bring to the table, then we brought it to the table and we had that discussion. Then it was the decision that we made. And so we can either choose to be with each other from now, or we can choose to separate. Why? Based on the things that we learned about each other. What is the choice that you make? Because how our people are, and it's not anything to be embarrassed about. It's something that wasn't taught to us. Our people are used to seeing somebody, meeting, like you said, and back at a party or something, or we meet them and we have relations with them, and automatically we'll shack up. Indian people will shack up. Don't even think that you don't. We'll shack up and then you'll have a baby. And then you learn that you don't even like each other. You don't even like certain stuff about each other. It gets on your nerves and you just don't even want to be with each other anymore. And that's what you show the child. And that's what the child learns, that dynamic of their mother and father growing up without courting, pre-courting. So Indian people, my indigenous people, courting is very important. And again, being able to make decisions based on things that happen in your relationship. You have a choice. Just know, you, each and every one of you, men and women alike, you have a choice in your relationship. And courting is something, like I said, it was something unheard of, but we as Indian people, we get used to these unrealistic expectations. So I've spoken of those before in the conversation you and I have had of unrealistic expectations, where I want something to be done in my relationship a certain way because I've seen it like this growing up in my past. Without explaining it that way, I would question, well, how come you do it like this? How come you can't do this for me? Or why didn't you have this ready? Or why don't we go and do this? How come it happens this way? Well, that's an unrealistic expectation. I'm putting all of that baggage onto my partner by not explaining my reasoning. And after so long of that, it just turns into more friction, and it'll grow apart and it won't work. But again, you cannot bring those unrealistic expectations or the trauma and baggage that you have from relationships in the past to your current one and expect it to change without ever explaining the whys, without ever explaining how comes, or blaming our current partner for something that happened that wasn't even her or wasn't even him. Courtship is a beautiful thing, my relatives. It's a very beautiful thing. Courting somebody who you have interest in is actually a strengthening ideology. It brings so much more strength to your dynamic with the person that you're trying to be with or the person that you're working towards being with. It will strengthen your relationship by talking, by explaining, by even bringing up things that you don't even want to talk about, or letting her find out, having her or him find out about something that you've done in your past, and then you not having to explain it like you have to justify yourself, but explain the situation, your feelings about what happened back then and how come it happened that way maybe. But it's just all based on emotions and feelings. courtship and any dynamics and relationship in Indian country, our people have historically been verbal people. Our stories are passed down verbally. Your origin stories of who you are, where you come from, came from your grandma and grandpa telling you what happened, or your mom and dad telling you, or your auntie and uncle telling you what happened. Back then, you learned it all by verbally hearing it. And so our people historically have always been great people of conversation and communication. Somewhere along those lines, of course, with the historical trauma that we lost, that we have to silence ourselves and be quiet to be a good little Indian. But nobody's silencing you anymore, my relatives. You don't have to be a good little Indian for anybody but you. And I think courtship is very important to build a healthier relationship with your partner.
No, thank you, because, you know, I see it as a beautiful rite of passage that could bring wellness to all genders. So let me ask you this. You know, one of the things I hear real positive about your program and your other brothers, your other allies, when someone comes to you, can you just describe, because sometimes, you know, we don't know where to start. Like, you know, we find out, you know, we've had this trauma of, say, sexual assault, or we've had this trauma. And when they come to you, what are the phases, or what kind of activities do you do to create the safety so that they can tell their story? Can you describe some of that for us?
So those of you who are out there who are in a place where you're able to listen to such a traumatic and hard story, if you're in a place to help your brother or your sister, I encourage you to carry medicine on you: sage, a sweetgrass braid, lavender. I encourage you to carry those medicines on you, with you. Have them available, because if you're somebody who is strong enough to be a sounding board for others, these medicines will help you and will also help the relative that's sharing. So when coming into those situations, a smudge you should present a smudge. Why? Because it's a cleaning and it brings more comfort and allows vulnerability to live in this area that two people are communicating with each other. The sage will create a beautiful and happy feeling and safe feeling, especially when you're most vulnerable. That is very, very important. If you're not able to have those medicines on you, it's encouraged to maybe not leave the room and go to somewhere private, because oftentimes dealing with people who have maybe sharing a story or them being sexually assaulted as children, they don't want to go to a private room with you. They don't want to go off with you to another room and leave everybody so nobody can see. Maybe go off into a corner somewhere, or around a corner where there's still access. They still have access, and know that. And these are small little things going into it. But if you ever get in between somebody who's sharing a very traumatic story with you and the doorway, the exit out, you'll see them grow uncomfortable. You'll see them grow. So mind yourself and where you're at when listening to somebody share their story with you. Because oftentimes we'll get in front of them, we'll look directly in their eyes and make them feel uncomfortable. And the exit's behind me, the door's behind me, and they're in front of me. So they feel attacked and they feel like they're forced to speak to you and just you. That's not a very safe feeling when somebody's feeling vulnerable. So maybe mind yourself in your placement. Make sure they know that they have 100% at any time access to this doorway or this exit. They can leave or stop this conversation at any point. They have the power. So again, when you have a choice, when you know you have a choice, just know that other people have a choice as well. you allow them, you afford them the opportunity of that choice, but still giving them your full attention and your ear, I found is very, very important. When I shared my first story that way, my brother did that for me. He put himself on the opposite end of the doorway, and I was in between him and the exit. And it was pretty cool. It was. I found that really, really helped me, knowing that it was a choice that I could make at any given time. The next step on hearing that is just acknowledging them. You don't even have to say much. It's just acknowledging their feelings. And once anybody ever does share anything personal about themselves to you, and again, you have to be a strong person to be able to listen to something that somebody might have gone through in their life in their childhoods. But be sure that you're ready for that. As soon as you're ready for that, they will come. People will heal. Healing's around us all the time. But your feedback is unnecessary. You know what I mean? The sounding board's feedback is most of the time unnecessary, and encouragement and asking before touching. You need consent to hug when somebody is sharing a very hurtful time in their lives. You need consent to come closer to them or anything, because there's vulnerability. You can't handle vulnerability like it's a jug of watered down Kool-Aid and you're trying to shake the sugar around in it. You gotta handle it like they're a child hurt, wanting help.
Yes. One of the things that I like to hear you speak about is that you had to learn self-love and self-care. And I tell you, during this COVID time, everyone's re-looking at, what does self-care mean, or what does it mean? So can you tell us, from a Native man's perspective, what is self-care and what is self-love? How do you get to self-love?
Getting to self-love is very hard. I found during COVID, before my partner and I currently, now we live together. She moved in with me and made my house a home. Prior to that was the beginning of COVID, and it was a lot of self-reflection. And I found it, again, even in self-reflection, after going through healing and still healing, it's tough to reflect on yourself. Because oftentimes you don't feel like reflecting on who you are as a man. I didn't feel like reflecting on myself, who I was as a man either. And you have to make a choice, brothers. You have to make a choice, man. And it's things that are helpful in helping you make a choice to be a good man, be a healthy man. You don't have to be great. You don't have to be perfect. There ain't no there's no perfection. But just knowing that you have to find some sort of healing or change, and some things that helped was crafting. So indigenous folks, everybody might know your own way. You might understand your own way of expression. It might not even be with your whole time, with your voice. You might not even express with your voice. You might not even express by giving or receiving. You might express by creating. Indigenous folks, indigenous people, our ancestors, these were everything to our ancestors, and they're everything to us. Make a choice. What can you build, or what can you create? What can you do with your hands, your mind, and your heart that expresses who you are, exactly who you are? Now, there's many things that people can do. There's so far many talented people than I can even count, that you can create beautiful things. And you create them by how you feel it should be created and how it should look. crafting is huge in our people, and craft to your own people's designs. Like, where's your nation history's designs come from? What do those mean? And put them all into something. I found that that's helped me, exponentially helped me. I craft parfleche belts, rawhide and latigo leather and tacks and paint and felt and all kind of cool things, leather, and they turn out more beautiful than I thought they would, you know. And I just express who you are as an Indigenous person. Is very helpful to you as a man, was very helpful to me as a man, no matter what it was. There's some amazing sculptors out there. There's some amazing, and what a perfect time to work on those and build them. So I look at them as level one. Before you even cut the rawhide, it's a full piece of rawhide. That's level one of where I'm at in my life and how I understand things. Then I start making the cuts. And then I start picturing and sketching the design. And then I start putting it on there, and I add and take away things and put more colors in there, take colors away. It's all a part of, it's all a part of me expressing who I am as a man, as a Lakota man, as a Dakota man.
That's, you know, you'll probably get a kick out of this, you know, because like we're also horse people, and so during the COVID, I was trying to, I'm in the process of building a relationship with a kayak, you know, inanimate object. Yeah. But I found myself having to just like with the horse, you know, get in it, make friends with it. And then it was unusual because I was even thinking I had to paint it, like paint the kayak.
Express yourself, Edky.
I was gonna put handprints on it, but it was like I was treating it like a horse. Can you talk? I mean, I know you do this equine therapy, but like a horse as medicine. Can you describe some of that for us? Because we Indians, we dream about horses, we draw horses, and why is this horse so important to us? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. I've had relatives, Lakota people, Sioux people were known for their relationship with horses. They were able to communicate with them in the most detailed ways historically. And it was something that was known. And other people out west, your people, the Cheyenne, Northern Cheyenne, we get the Crow. Crow people were always known as horse trainers. Historically, they were known for training horses. They were good at horse training. And but horses, what I've grown to learn from a child was horses are reflective in feelings and emotion. They'll reflect whatever current emotion that you're going through, or whatever current emotion that's predominantly just caught and clogging you from growing and healing. A horse will almost force you to deal with that before moving forward. So there's different ways. Of course, we have the relay team and how we paint the horses in races and for challenges and things. And then there's a way here at home that we developed that children will paint their assault on a horse. So we've done it where there's colors that mean certain things and culturally, but I'll change the cultural understanding down to the color of red means something that hurts you. A certain design is something that hurts you. And there's certain colors, something that is helpful. there's positive, negative colors, and there's positive, negative designs. And so these children will go and paint their horse, paint their story on their horse, and without ever saying anything, it's pretty beautiful to watch children design and paint the times they've been sexually assaulted, the times they've been beaten, physically assaulted, the times where they were, where it was, how it was, when it was. And they'll tell their story and they'll just cry. And geez, I find myself crying with them. Just watching this, watching them tell the story on this horse, and watching this horse just give their entire self to this child. It's, and I can hear the conversation that's happening. I can hear the conversation of the horse, what the horse is telling the child and what the child is telling the horse. And it's all intellectual. It's all through the mind and through the heart and the nari, the soul. But there's a communication, there's a language that horses use, and the horse's language is emotional. Emotion is the language of the horse. No matter what tribe you are, no matter where you come from, emotion is the language of your horses. And once you understand those languages, designing your horse or painting your story with your horse on who you are as a man or a woman will bond you and your horse together for the rest of your life or the rest of the horse's life, and it will only encourage you to do more. Now for races, now an Indian relay, such as the frontline horses, a frontline relay, we paint the circles around their eyes, and we'll paint the lines on their arms and their chests, and we'll put handprints and we'll put hailstones and lightning bolts, because the horses come from the thunder beings. They're brought to us by the thunder beings, and they're directly related to them, so we must acknowledge that. And the circles around the horse's eyes will give sight, so the horse can see. Use the horse's eyes to see out danger, to see out resolutions to a tough situation, will help the rider at the same time. And then you decorate your horse with the victories that you've had, your honors that you've earned in your life as an Indigenous person, and you paint them honor. And know there's a way that you go for even the thunder beings and hailstones and whatever you feel in your heart is representation of you and how you express yourself. You express on designs on your horse as well, because that's your relative, that's your brother, or that's your sister. And then you'll go together. If you're a horse nation, your relative will take you to a place that you've never gone before, and you'll feel safe, you'll feel content, and you'll feel amazingly strong by using those designs that our ancestors gave us.
Well, maybe I appreciate that, because just as you're saying, they're painting their feeling on the horse, and they're telling the story. A lot of times, I think telling the story when someone reaches certain check marks or benchmarks, there are rites of passage. So maybe in our remaining time here, we could ask you, Greg, like, what have you seen help Indian men? Like, what rites of passage? Because like I think men in my family that when I see them get their Indian name as an example. But what kind of rites of passage do we need to start to go for and to have for young boys, and as they become men? What kind of rites of passage do we need to do or to bring back for some? Can you talk about that?
Amblecha. Amblecha in Lakota is Amblecha. English, it's a vision quest or going on the hill. For 4 days, 4 days and 4 nights, as something that was the rite of passage for us as indigenous folks. I don't know the history and the background of other cultures here in Indian country, but here in our territory, Hamblecha was it. When you're a young boy, at the time of your voice changing and your body changing, growing hair in places, when that come time of your rite of passage and becoming a man, you would figure yourself out and you would be faced with yourself. For 4 days, you had to reflect on who you are as a boy and who you want to be as a man and what things you would carry. Men would come, have conversation with you after your hamblecha. Your ancestors will come and encourage you to the things that you're going to be. And this is prior, it should be, this should be, so your name as a child, you should have a name as a child. And then you have your name going into your becoming of man ceremonies, these rites of passage, hamblecha. And after that, you'll earn a new name for yourself and who you're going to be. And after this is done, your uncles are there. They're calling to you by your full name, by your new name, your new earned name. And things are shown to them, young boys, by their uncles on how to be men and just fostering. So those men should be in that boy's life growing up as uncles.
You know,
we haven't had those men. I haven't. I didn't get those men in my life. I wasn't afforded the opportunity of having healthy men in my life growing up as a boy. And I understand you, brothers out there who feel the same way. And for the nephews out there that don't have uncles to look up to, healthy uncles to look up to, I see you, I feel for you. And we're gonna come back. We're coming back. And for the women out there, we're coming back. I don't want to say believe me or trust me or anything, but watch us. Watch us. We'll come back for you. We'll come back because those rites of passage are very much needed. And without those rites of passage that I wasn't afforded to go through, and then I went through later in my life and found that that's what was holding me back of growing as a man this long. Hamblecha is a huge one. Along with hamblecha, it's growing up with horses. Growing up with horses around you, because again, a horse will show. If anybody watches somebody with their horse, and you can watch how that person is as a man or a woman, the horse will display it. The horse will display that person's personality. That horse will show you that person's beliefs even, and how that person is. Is that person safe? Is that person trustworthy? Can I be friends with that person? Is that person a peaceful person? Can I bring them into my home? Those horses will give us that rite of passage because the horse tells no lies. The horse nation, they do not lie. And if you lie to them, they'll show you that you're lying. They'll show you that I don't believe you. Get off my back.
Boom.
Yeah. And then you're humbled. Then you gotta start from square one again. Like, oh, okay, well, let me crawl back on. Let me fix it. Okay, I know what I did wrong.
In Blackfoot, they have a word. It's guinea mook, or they'll say sometimes when you're not treating someone, a horse or someone good, they'll go guinea mook, and what it is like when they buck you off, when they buck you off like that, it's kind of it's because some of us might feel like we got bucked off during this COVID time, or we might feel like we got bucked off our lifestyle. or that we got bucked off just the way that we were living. So in your closing comments, Greg, because we wanted to just listen to you, and sometimes I always tell people to we have 2 of these and 1 of these. So I've been really, I invited you here because I just wanted people to hear you as a strong young man from the reservation, and how you're bringing wellness. So what kind of closing, in a couple of minutes, what kind of closing comments, and talk directly to the men out there, or the young boys out there, what kind of comments would you like to say to them?
I'll say it because I believed this for a very long time. I thought that I was alone. I thought that I was the only one that was hurt. I thought I was the one to take it for all of boys. I thought, well, if it was gonna happen to anybody, I'm glad it happened to me and not everyone else. And I grew angry. And so brothers out there, you're not alone. You're not the only one that hurt. There's others out there that encourage you, that will encourage you. I say to you that I appreciate you. I see them, and I can feel each and every one of the brothers out there that there's a little boy inside of you that is wanting to be loved. Love him. There's a little boy inside of you wanting to feel safe. Protect him. There's a little boy inside each and every one of you that wants to be heard. Listen to him. Because that little boy will guide you for the rest of your life. If you don't listen to that little boy, you'll forever chase him. You'll forever chase that little boy inside of you. If you're always chasing that little boy, you're never growing. You'll stay far away from healing as possible. If you don't like who you are today as a man, or if you're angry, you don't know why things are happening around you, or nobody wants to be around you, or if you're toxic, it's because that little boy is lost. Trust me, brothers, that I was lost for a long time. And things that happened to me when I was 9 years old, I stayed 9 years old for a long time. I stayed that little boy for a long time. And again, when I felt hurt, I lashed out like a 9-year-old boy would and threw a tantrum. But I was a man throwing a tantrum. So when being a man throws a tantrum, I hurt people. I hurt some pretty great people out there in my lifetime. I hurt some relatives out there in my lifetime that I could never get back. I could never make that right. I can't make that right until they choose to want to forgive me. When that day comes, I hope it'll be beautiful. But grow, brothers. Don't stay that little boy. You continue being that little boy and not acknowledging who you are as a man, you're gonna hurt people. And hurting people is the last thing we should do as Indigenous. We were born to protect and provide. We're here today because our ancestors, the men in our ancestry, protected and provided. That's why you're here today. We're born, we were made to protect and to provide. Brothers, it's time for us to find those roles again. It's time for us to bring that back. It's time for us to be men again. It's time for us to grow up from being little boys to be a man. This auntie, Theda, she deserves it. Your mother deserves it. Your grandmothers deserve it. Your aunties deserve us to heal.
Mm-hmm.
The women out there, indigenous women, they need us, brothers. They do. And just pay attention. Like Auntie said, we have 2 of these and 1 of these. Double this. Use it.
Okay, well, you know, this time flies, you know. We really respect you, Greg, and we really, you know, we want to invite you back, you know, because you said some magic words around forgiveness and self-forgiveness, and then maybe that will be another program. But on behalf of Native Wellness Institute, you know, our 24th week, we're just getting better and better. And today's program, we just want to give you the hug, Greg. All of those out there, you know, we're on every day at noon Pacific time, 1 o'clock Mountain time. But come join us because Indians are getting through this, and we're going to be strong. We're going to be bold, and we're going to be forgiving as we move through this. Because Indians know how to do this.
Oh yeah.
We just know how to do this, you know, and come out better people on the other side. But Greg, I just want to thank you. We're going to sign off, but I want to thank you, my nephew. You made me proud today. You made me very proud just by the words and expressing yourself. And I have a feeling that our audience was listening. So with that, we're going to sign off, you know, give a we'll see you next time. We'll catch you next time. Thank you very much.
Dog shot.